This is the BGCL Youth Center Digital Urban Skills Gardening Edition. My name's Arno. I'm a leader at the Boys and Girls Club. I am currently in quarantine at my house for like at least the next little bit of a week. So I'm gonna sort of show you how to do some stuff here from home. What we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be learning to transplant a plant. You may think, oh, like what is transplanting? What does that mean? So what transplanting is when you take a plant that is like healthy and growing and you transplant it to another pot. Why would you do this? You do this because your plant has been growing for quite a bit of time, so if you have like a plant that is maybe like a year old, you're going to want to transplant it into a bigger pot so that its roots have room to grow in that pot. One thing that you do want to make sure that you are doing is that when you are transplanting, you are making sure that the pot is not too big. So I'm going to show you what we need, and I'm going to sort of go over that in a little bit here. So things we need are a plant. Like this one, which is healthy and has been growing for quite a bit of time. This one here I've had for about 2 years, and it's been in this pot for about 2 years, so it's really time for a transplant. My guess is the roots on this are going to be pretty big. Next thing we need is a slightly bigger pot. So I picked this pot. It's just like slightly bigger, so you can like put the whole pot in. The reason we want a slightly bigger pot and not like a huge pot is that in the future when we go to water, then the roots can reach all that water, whereas if we pick a huge pot, then that water is just going to sit on the edges of the dirt. So we really want that the pot to just be like slightly bigger, not too big. So just like one size up. Okay, the other thing we're going to need is dirt. I'm using this Pro Mix potting soil because it's what I had in the house. Most potting soils are really great because they have fertilizers built in, so you don't have to fertilize for the first, I think this one says 9 months. Different fertilizers say different things, but that's the benefits to using like a potting soil rather than just like dirt, is that it is built to give nutrients to plants. Next thing we need is water, which we will use at the end, and finally, depending on the plant you are transplanting, you're going to need a knife. A regular kitchen knife should do. I'll sort of go over when to use the kitchen knife. You're really going to want to use it when you have sort of like a solid pot. So a pot that is made of like, yeah, here we go. So a pot like this, where it's like hard, you're really going to want to, you're going to need to use a knife for that. And I'll kind of go over it with this pot just to show you. However, that's sort of when you're going to want to use the knife. Okay, so with that, I think we're good to start transplanting. So, my first step in transplanting is I fill my other pot with a little bit of dirt. It's a bit of an awkward process. And you will want to do this on a surface that you can clean easily because this is a messy process. It is not a like easy light process. So you fill this pot with a little bit of dirt, and what I'm doing now is I'm just sort of tamping down the edges and making sure that there is room for a plant to go in there. So I'm really kind of tamping down in the middle, tamping down on the sides so that there's room for a new plant to go in there. Perfect. So, once we have some dirt in this pot, we might have to add some more, but that's okay. Once we have some dirt in this pot, what we can do with this plant is we're going to start squeezing the edges. Now, if your pot is soft, that's sort of really going to come in handy here. So we're going to start squeezing the edges, and what we're doing here is we're trying to separate the roots from the pot. So we're really trying to create some space for the plant to be able to like lift out. However, if your plant is in a harder pot, then what we're going to do is we're going to use butter knife, kitchen knife, doesn't really matter, and we're going to run the knife along the edge of the pot. And you want to make sure that you're not really cutting the roots, you just kind of want to slide it in to separate the roots from the pot. And like I said, this is a messy process, so be prepared to clean up some dirt at the end. Otherwise your folks might be mad. There we go. Okay, so let's try that. Now sometimes these can be easy, sometimes these can be hard. You're never really sure on how they're gonna go until you do it. So let's try it. So we're gonna gently, and the key to all of this is being gently because it's a plant, right? Like you don't wanna hurt it. So we're gonna gently just sort of squeeze over top, get rid of whatever extra dirt is on the sides. I'm even shaking it a little here. And then we're gonna try, oh, beautiful. Look at that nice healthy root ball. Yeah, so as I expected, you can see the roots on the bottom there. That means it's starting to get pot bound. So it was time to transplant this. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shake off the loose dirt, just kind of like this. And then at the bottom here, where those roots are really pot bound, I'm just gonna kind of try and separate them out with my fingies. So we're gonna like zhuzh them and try and separate them out. The goal is not to break the roots, but just to sort of like push them out so that they know that it's time to grow out and not keep growing in this sort of circle shape that they have been growing in. Of course, this is always better in your backyard, but if it's cold, you don't want to shock your plants. Okay. So now, if I put that in there right now, there's not quite enough room, so we're gonna need to, I'm gonna put that down, squish the sides like I was doing before, and make sure there's enough room in the middle there. So if I were to show you like that, there's definitely enough room in the middle there for that plant. And let's try putting it in there. Now, that's a little too high. So as you can see, the top of the plant comes over the top of the pot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just dig down just a little deeper because we want to have some room between, or like a bit of a lip between the top of the dirt and the top of the pot. So about that much room. And the main reason for that is it will make your life 10 times easier when you are watering. When you're watering, it really helps to have some room at the top so that the water can sort of sit there for a little bit. Okay. Now I'm gonna grab this extra dirt that fell off, stuff it in there. And like I'm grabbing some of the leaves that fell off as well. That's okay. It's you know, it's all organic matter, so it's all gonna dissolve into the dirt anyways. And then I'm gonna supplement with a little bit more extra soil from my bag here. And just like tuck it in on the sides. And then as you go, you're gonna wanna tamp down on the sides here, just like that. And that's just me pushing down on the dirt. You don't want to do it too hard so as to disturb the roots, but you do want to sort of push down the dirt so that it gets in there and that when you water it, it's not all going to like settle to the bottom. Because as you water it, the dirt will sort of go down. And you want to make sure that you're doing most of that work now. Slowly but surely, add more dirt. Now this plant is actually called a Polka Dot Plant, which is kind of fun. It gets that because of the stuff on the leaves here, the pattern. And there we go. Now I have transplanted it from this little pot, which I can probably now use for another plant, and into this big pot. Once you're done transplanting, you want to give that plant a nice heavy water. The main reason for this is to help the roots settle. So we're going to give that a nice heavy water. And there we go. Now it can go back to whatever place you had it in. It will sort of start to grow bigger now. I'm going to put a bit of a cage around this because I know this plant likes to get tall. That's up to you. So that's how to transplant a plant. Hopefully this helped. Next week we're going to be learning how to do cuttings off of plants. We're going to take a cutting off of an inch plant, which is this one here. It's probably hard to see with that sunlight behind it. However, my inch plant is currently not doing so hot. So we're going to take some cuttings off of it, put them in water, and then we're going to plant those cuttings to sort of see if we can't get a new one going. So that's what we're going to be doing next week, and then in 2 weeks, I'm going to be planting my tomato seeds for my outdoor garden. If it's safe for you to do so, you can go grab some tomato seeds. If it's not safe, don't worry about it. These times are obviously tricky for stuff like that. I have a bunch of tomato seeds here at the house because I had some left over from last year. So that's what I will be doing. Other things you may need would be like a big pot, like a 5-gallon bucket, but that's in the long run, so don't worry too much about that. Right now, all we really need is tomato seeds for 2 weeks from now. Okay, now that brings us to the end of our Urban Skills Gardening. If you are going around looking after your plants and caring for them, you may wonder, you know, when do I water these? Most plants, as a general rule, get watered every like 3 to 5 days, and then your succulents and your cacti, or your cacti is even longer, but your succulents are generally every week or so. A good rule of thumb for watering plants is you touch the dirt. So you're gonna touch the dirt. Here I just watered this, so obviously the dirt is wet. So if the dirt's wet, you don't water it. If the dirt's dry, you water it. And that's my general rule. Even when I'm like outdoors in my garden, I go around touching all the pots and making sure that the dirt's somewhat moist. Awesome. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you learned something. I'll see you in other programming or with gardening next week.